26 laps have been completed. Let's run down the field once again. Benny Parsons leading. Second place, Dave Marcus. In third position is Morgan Shepherd. Fourth is Joe Rutman. Fifth is Richard Petty. Sixth belongs to Dale Earnhardt. In seventh position is Darrell Waltrip. Eighth is Bobby Allison. Ninth position, Harry Gant. And 10th is Terry Labonte. There is a look at the younger of the two, racing Petty's Kyle.
A very interesting young man, Bob. Not only has he become an expert racing driver, but he was an outstanding football player in high school. And it is said around the pit area that he is also a tremendous musician, although he himself is more than modest about it. He plays the violin, he plays the guitar, and he also composes a lot of music. So there were a lot of things Kyle Petty could have done other than drive race cars. There's Darrell Waltrip, who about 25 or 30 laps ago looked like he was running pretty quickly. He seems to have calmed down right now. He runs in 7th position, and there is Darrell Waltrip's pit area, where usually his wife Stevie is very much involved in keeping score or calling some of the shots, at least on the team. And Waltrip continues to motor around here. Almost get the feeling that he's found a pace that he wants. He's keeping Benny Parsons about a half a lap from him, and Waltrip probably is hoping that maybe one of those pit stop time warps will bring Benny Parsons back closer to him. But you know something, Bob? I just looked up on the racetrack here, and I'm watching the race, and I now see that Waltrip has lost some ground to Benny Parsons. Waltrip is running back on the racetrack just behind Buddy Arrington and just in front of one of the local drivers, Joe Fields. He's in heavy traffic, and Parsons is definitely beginning to reel him in also.
Well, Darrell Waltrip certainly one of the more colorful and controversial drivers in Winston Grand Cup racing, as we see that Tom Sneva in the Simonized Buick back out on the racetrack in competition. Of course, he has a problem apparently with the transmission that they've been working on for several laps. Tom Sneva back out on the racetrack. We were talking about Darrell Waltrip and the fact that he is somewhat of a controversial driver. He is booed rather loudly at most racetracks that he competes on. And of course, Darrell was accused of rough driving during an incident during a qualifying race at Daytona.
Yeah, he really was, and it resulted in Neil Bonnet, one of the most respected drivers on the trail. Without quoting any names, Neil said he felt that the code of the road had been thrown out the window at Daytona, and he expected to certainly give no quarter during the running of the race. Of course, Neil had the misfortune of crashing when a slower car blew an engine as a pack of some of the top runners were coming down the front stretch to the tri-oval at Daytona, and Neil ended up against the fence in turn number 1. But you know about Darrell Waltrip, one thing you got to say about the guy, the trademark of this fella from the early days of his career, back when he used to barnstorm throughout the Midwest, go up to the Salem Superspeedway in Salem, Indiana, has always been aggression. We have all known what to expect from Darrell Waltrip from day one, and he's never changed.
And you cannot argue with success, because he had a tremendous second half of the season last year that took him into the Winston Cup Championship. Here is the leader, meanwhile, Benny Parsons in the J.D. Stacy Pontiac. 134 laps have been completed, and continue running in second position. Dave Marcus. Third is Morgan Shepherd. Back in a moment.
They call me the flying fool just cause the ride.
Harry Gant had an oil spill that caused another yellow flag. As the field pitted, Benny Parsons remained in the lead. And with 145 laps completed, we now return to the 1982 Richmond 400, still under caution.
Richmond, Virginia, hosting the Richmond 400 here this afternoon. The weather has begun to cloud up just a little. Of course, we had rain last night, and we had a bright sunny day in the early going, but by golly, looks like what could be possibly rain clouds have moved in. And so if we have rain, one half of the race will complete it, and we have completed 145 at this time. Here's the situation. We're still under yellow. We have had a lot of pit activity in the past few laps, and that has juggled the positions. Benny Parsons still is your leader. Morgan Shepherd is second. Dave Marcus has fallen back to 7th position. In third is Joe Rutman. 4th is Dale Earnhardt. 5th is Darrell Waltrip. 6th is Richard Petty. And 7th is Dave Marcus. So the pit activity certainly was not kind to Dave Marcus at this time, as the cars line up 2 abreast, as they do for all restarts in Grand National Racing. The fastest cars from the top. The green flag out again. Into turn number 2. It's Benny Parsons still edging out ahead of Morgan Shepherd in car number 98. But Shepard, as has been demonstrated all afternoon, is not letting Parsons get too far ahead.
And Bob, we're now looking at Bobby Allison. They had a chance to make another adjustment on this race car. Remember, this is the car that was demolished in practice late yesterday afternoon. This is a situation Allison was in similar at Talladega in an ESPN televised race last May. Allison will now try to get around Benny Parsons, thereby unlapping himself, and hope for another caution flag. If Allison can get around Benny Parsons, another caution flag comes out, he goes all the way around the racetrack, he can get back on the same lap, he'll still have a chance for winning. And look at Allison threatening Benny Parsons. They've been fine-tuning this car. It started out audibly just on the radio when they came in for this pit stop under caution. It gave crew chief Gary Nelson and the rest of the Dyegard racing team an opportunity to do some more work in the car. And I'll tell you, I think they helped him, because Allison right now, the miracle car of today, is unlapping himself. He can get by. He'll be on the same lap with Benny Parsons. And Joe Rutman is trying to follow Allison through. If Joe goes through, unlike Bobby, Joe moves into the lead.
Well, Joe Rutman has come from nowhere to second and challenging for the lead. Allison sneaks by Benny Parsons, and so does Joe Rutman. We have a new leader, ladies and gentlemen, the third leader of the afternoon. Joe Rutman in the number 2 Stacy Buick has moved into the lead, with Parsons falling back to second, and now Bobby Allison has unlapped himself in the number 88 Gatorade car.
And the 4th and 5th car in this line, there they are, 4, 5, happen to be Dale Earnhardt, and guess who? Darrell Waltrip, the ever-present Junior Johnson number 11 race car. They run 4th and 5th, not only on the grid, but also on the racetrack. And there's Waltrip going to the inside of Earnhardt, down the backstretch. Earnhardt on the high side, Waltrip on the low side. That is door-to-door racing.
Well, Waltrip with the advantage coming out of the turn, so Darrell moves up another position and is now in 3rd place. Darrell Waltrip made a couple of early pit stops in this race, fell back to the end of the field, but has worked himself back up to 3rd place and is definitely in a position to challenge the leaders.
I tell you right now, if Bobby Allison had a hot dog wrapper in that car, he'd throw it out on the racetrack and start praying for a caution. Bobby Allison is saying right now, caution, 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 caution. I got my lap back. I'd like to have a chance at winning this race, but I tell you, we went well over 100 laps between the 2 most recent cautions. The drivers here are really executing this 1/2 mile racetrack at Richmond Raceway quite well here today. Allison may have a very long and tedious wait. Joe Rutman, remember, has just taken the lead. It's the first time Joe has led. There is the 2nd and 3rd place car battle on your screen. 2nd place is Benny Parsons, who was clearly the superior setup during the first 120 laps of this race. But as so often happens, adjustments made during a green flag can change the complexion of a race. Chances are Parsons' crew did very little. They were the fastest car. They had no reason to make any changes. Everybody else did, and right now it looks like those changes have put Benny at a disadvantage.
Darrell Waltrip, who is battling Benny Parsons and touching the Parsons car as they go into turn 3, has won the last 3 Richmond 400 races. Now, not the last races that were run here. Again, they run 2 a year, but he has won the last 3, or he's going for his 3rd straight win here. He has won the last 2 races at Richmond. Here he is moving around Benny Parsons. So Darrell Waltrip now in 2nd, and Joe Rutman still in the lead.
Well, Rutman has just gotten around Bobby Allison, and Allison, who was in the same lap with the leaders, is now a lap behind again. So that caution that we were theorizing that Bobby Allison would have liked to have had, it never came, and all that hard work is now at least temporarily kind of put on the back burner. Allison would like to catch up with Joe Rutman once again, but Rutman appears to be running pretty well right now. Joe Rutman with Dale Inman as crew chief. The Inman, of course, the guy who was with the Petty clan for so many years, is going to be a tremendous help to Joe Rutman, who's a little lean on experience in Grand National racing. But I'll tell you, having Dale Inman in your pits is like having a driver who's raced for about 20 years on this circuit.
Joe Rutman, 37-year-old driver from Upland, California, is the leader of this event. Right behind him is Bobby Allison, but don't forget that Allison is a lap down. 2nd position belongs to the 3rd car there in the line, Darrell Waltrip in the Mountain Dew Buick. We have had 4 caution periods. The most recent caused Harry Gant to fall out of the race. We have only 3 cars that have dropped out of this race: Gary Ballou, Tom Sneva, and Harry Gant. The leader continues to be Joe Rutman at Richmond. 63 laps completed. The first three, Joe Rutman in car 2, Darrell Waltrip in 11, and Benny Parsons in car number 28. We've had three leaders. Rutman took over the lead just a few laps ago from Benny Parsons. Dave Marcus and Dale Earnhardt battling here for 4th and 5th position right now. The Earnhardt machine, the Wrangler Jeans Ford, in that position. But Marcus in the Stacy Chevy has been doing a great job all day and is still up there in contention. He lost several positions during the most recent series of pit stops. He was in 2nd, dropped back to 7th, now has moved up again.
Those two drivers also are 2 of only 7 that remain on the same lap with the leader, Joe Rutman. Those people are in order. Rutman, Waltrip now runs 2nd. Benny Parsons, Motors 3rd, make that 4th. Petty has gotten around Parsons. It's Petty 3rd, Parsons 4th. Dale Earnhardt 5th. Morgan Shepherd runs 6th. And Dave Marcus 7th. And only 7 drivers remain on the lead lap. And at least at this moment in the race, none of those drivers in 5th, 6th, and 7th are in any jeopardy of being lapped by the leader, Rutman.
Well, those clouds are beginning to get even darker over turns 3 and 4, and there was about a 50% chance of rain here this afternoon. Let's hope that we can get all of this race in, because it has certainly been an exciting one in almost the first half. We're 167 laps in, and of course it is a 400-lap race. Let's hope that we can get this whole thing completed and get the race completed in its entirety.
Well, that also becomes a part of the strategy. You know, the tires here, they do vary widely, particularly in the area of the compound that is used. Some of the tires are very soft and some of them are harder. And as the crews watch the approaching clouds coming in from turns number 3 and number 4, if we get to the point where we do have another series of pit stops, and that is quite a number of laps off, you might see some of these crews going to a softer compound. The wear isn't nearly as good, but you normally get a better bite on the racetrack with the softer compound. So that certainly does become a factor in this race, as long as we stay green and as long as Mother Nature holds the precipitation up in the sky.
Once again, this is the 5th place Dale Earnhardt car, Wrangler Jeans Ford. He started 8th and currently is in 6th position. So Earnhardt running in 6th place. Right behind him, Dave Marcus in the J.D. Stacy Chevrolet. Dave from Wausau, Wisconsin, is 40 years of age.
You know, Earnhardt has a very interesting statistic that is attached to his career. As we look at the leader, Joe Rutman, maneuvering turns number 1 and 2. Earnhardt is the youngest driver in the history of automobile racing to win over $1 million. He won more than $1 million before he turned his 30th birthday. Here's a guy who didn't start racing till he was almost 30 years of age, Joe Rutman. He started out in an electric yellow number 70 race car. Those of you up in the upper Midwest will remember the number 70. By the way, the number 70 was indicative of the year Joe started driving race cars, and the yellow, well, that came from Joy Fair, one of the legendary drivers of the North.
Several adjustments must be made when these cars switch from a high-speed racetrack to a small racetrack like today. Here's Leandra Riley.
The first race in the Grand National Circuit was the Daytona 500, and this tire was run in that race. There are some obvious differences that you can see in this tire than in the tires you'll see at today's Richmond race. Primarily, it is a bigger tire. There is also an inner tire, and for a couple of reasons. At Daytona, they go at high speeds, and if the car should have a blowout, it will not drop that much if the inner tire holds it up. This also has an inner tube. The Daytona tires are made out of a harder rubber to withstand the high heat and intense temperatures that are complementary to a race like that. Now over here we have a short track tire. Probably the biggest difference you will notice is that it is smaller, and that is because they don't need the height because of the gear ratio. Also, this tire is different because it is made of a softer rubber. The heat is not a problem here. They will not be maintaining the speeds that they had at Daytona. But the biggest difference between these two tires is the width. You will notice that this Daytona tire is a lot narrower than this one in the short track. And that is because when they go into the turns, the pressure is more on the width of the tire than it is on the height, where you don't have those high turns.
Joe Rutman is leading the Richmond 400 with 176 laps completed. Darrell Waltrip is 2nd, Benny Parsons 3rd. There are 7 cars on the lead lap.